A little girl begged, "Please give me this job, it's very important." The CEO froze, his eyes filled with tears as he finally understood the heartbreaking reason behind her words. "Quick question before we start. Where are you watching from? Leave your city in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Your support means everything." The gleaming 50-story tower of Westfield Enterprises stood like a silver needle against the clear blue Boston sky. Inside the immaculate lobby, 7-year-old Lily Morgan clutched her small backpack with white-knuckled determination. Her blonde hair was neatly brushed into 2 slightly uneven pigtails, evidence of her own handiwork that morning. The security guard at the front desk peered down at the child with a mixture of confusion and concern. "Little miss, where are your parents?" he asked, glancing around for an accompanying adult. Lily straightened her posture and lifted her chin, just as she'd practiced in front of the mirror. "I'm here for the 9 o'clock interview with Mr. Westfield." Her voice was clear and surprisingly steady for a child her age. The guard's eyebrows shot up. "The interview? With Mr. Westfield himself?" "Yes, sir," Lily replied, pulling a crumpled newspaper clipping from her pocket. "Administrative assistant position. I'm not late, am I?" Before the baffled guard could respond, a rush of employees streamed through the revolving doors, creating enough momentary chaos for Lily to slip past the security desk and into an elevator. Heart pounding, she pressed the button for the 48th floor, just as she'd memorized from the job listing. In his corner office, Alexander Westfield ran his finger down the schedule on his tablet. At 32, he was one of the youngest CEOs in Boston's competitive financial district, known for his brilliance as much as his ruthlessness. His company had acquired 4 smaller firms in the past year alone, earning him the nickname the Shark among his competitors. "Send in the first candidate for the admin position," he instructed his temporary assistant through the intercom. He'd fired the previous 3 in less than 6 months. Perfection wasn't just expected at Westfield Enterprises, it was demanded. A knock at the door. "Come in," he called without looking up from his reports. When no response came, Alexander glanced toward the entrance with irritation, only to find a small child standing in the doorway. Her blue dress was meticulously pressed, though her white socks didn't quite match. Her bright green eyes surveyed the room with nervous wonder. "How did you get in here?" Alexander demanded, already reaching for his phone to call security. "This is a restricted floor." "I'm here for the interview," Lily answered, her voice smaller now that she faced the imposing man whose photograph she'd studied in the newspaper. "For my mom." Alexander paused, his finger hovering over the call button. "Your mother sent you up here alone?" "No, sir. She couldn't come." Lily took a tentative step forward. "She's sick again today. But I can work too. I'm very organized, and I know all my times tables up to 12. Something about the child's earnest determination gave Alexander pause. Against his better judgment, he motioned to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down." As Lily climbed onto the leather chair, her feet dangling well above the floor, Alexander studied her. There was something vaguely familiar about her features, something he couldn't quite place. "What's your name?" "Lily Morgan, sir. I'm 7 years old, but I'll be 8 in November." "And where exactly is your mother, Lily Morgan?" The girl's composure wavered slightly. "At home. She gets really tired. The doctor said she needs rest, but she was so sad about missing this interview." She opened her backpack and carefully removed a folder. "I brought her resume. She stayed up late making it perfect." Alexander reluctantly accepted the folder, opening it to find a meticulously prepared resume for one Sarah Morgan, age 34, single mother, with an impressive background in administrative work and office management. What caught his eye, however, was her most recent employment. 5 years at Hartwick Financial, a firm he had acquired and subsequently dismantled 18 months ago. "Your mother worked for Hartwick?" he asked, a faint frown crossing his features. Lily nodded eagerly. "She was Mr. Hartwick's special assistant. She said he was the best boss ever." Alexander's jaw tightened imperceptibly. James Hartwick had been his most vocal opponent during the acquisition, publicly calling Alexander a soulless opportunist who values profit over people. The acquisition had resulted in over 200 layoffs. "I see," he said, his voice cooling several degrees. "And how did your mother become unwell?" Lily's eyes dropped to her hands, which were twisted together in her lap. After she lost her job, she had to work 3 different places. She gets really, really tired. And then last month The child's voice faltered. She fell down and couldn't get up. The ambulance had to come. A knock interrupted them as Alexander's temporary assistant, Ms. Winters, entered the room. She stopped short at the sight of the child. "Mr. Westfield, the candidates for the position are waiting, and you have the board meeting at 10. Her eyes darted to Lily with obvious confusion. "Tell them there will be a slight delay," Alexander replied, his gaze still fixed on the little girl. When Ms. Winters had gone, Alexander leaned forward. "Lily, where's your mother right now exactly?" The child's lower lip trembled slightly before she regained control. "At Boston Memorial. She told me to tell everyone she's at home resting, but she's really at the hospital again. I wasn't supposed to know, but I heard her talking to Aunt Jenny on the phone." Alexander sat back in his chair, momentarily stunned by this revelation. "And you came here? By yourself? How?" "I took the bus. Mom showed me how for emergencies." Pride flickered across her small face. "I used my birthday money for the fare." For a moment, Alexander was at a loss for words. A rare occurrence in his professional life. The girl's determination was both foolish and somehow admirable. Before he could decide what to do with this unusual situation, Lily spoke again, her voice suddenly urgent. "Please, Mr. Westfield, my mom needs this job. She cries at night when she thinks I'm asleep. Our apartment has a yellow paper on the door that says we have to leave. I tried to help with my lemonade stand money, but Mom said it wasn't enough." Something shifted in Alexander's expression, a subtle change that few would notice. "Your mother is in the hospital right now? Today?" Lily nodded solemnly. "She told me she'd be home tomorrow, but sometimes that doesn't happen." Alexander picked up his phone and pressed a button. "Ms. Winters, cancel my morning appointments, and find out which room Sarah Morgan is in at Boston Memorial." He lowered his voice. "And call James Hartwick, immediately." Lily's eyes widened. "Are you going to help my mom get better?" Alexander studied the child's hopeful expression, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his typically impassive face. "I'm going to see your mother, yes. Can I come too?" The question was tinged with both hope and worry. "I'm good at making her smile when she's sad." For the first time, a hint of softness touched Alexander's features. "Yes, Lily. I think that would be appropriate." As they prepared to leave, Alexander found himself watching the methodical way the child repacked her backpack, making sure everything was in its place. There was something hauntingly familiar about her precise movements, her serious demeanor occasionally broken by flashes of childish enthusiasm. Standing, he extended his hand formally, as if to a business associate. "Shall we go, Miss Morgan?" Lily's small hand disappeared into his as she looked up at him with green eyes that suddenly seemed to reach into some forgotten corner of his memory. "Your mom is lucky to have such a brave daughter," he said quietly as they walked toward the elevator. Lily beamed up at him. "She says I'm just like my dad, strong on the inside where it counts." Her smile faded slightly. "I don't remember him, though. He went away before I was born." Alexander froze mid-step, an odd expression crossing his face. "Did she? Has your mother told you about him?" "Just that he was smart and brave and that he had to go away for an important reason." Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes I pretend he's a secret agent on a mission, or a superhero who has to keep his identity secret to protect us." As the elevator doors closed around them, Alexander Westfield stared straight ahead, his reflection in the polished doors showing a man whose carefully constructed world had just begun to crack at its foundation. Boston Memorial Hospital's modern glass exterior belied the institutional sterility of its interior. Alexander's confident stride slowed noticeably as they entered through the automatic doors, the antiseptic smell immediately transporting him back to memories he'd spent years trying to suppress. "I know where Mom's room is," Lily offered, tugging gently on his hand. "It's the same as last time." Alexander nodded, allowing the child to lead him through the maze-like corridors. The trust she'd placed in him, a complete stranger, was both touching and troubling. What kind of desperate circumstances would drive a 7-year-old to venture alone into the city, seeking employment on her mother's behalf? As they approached room 412, a nurse emerging from the doorway spotted Lily and frowned. "Lily Morgan, what are you doing here? Your Aunt Jenny is supposed to pick you up from school today." Her gaze shifted suspiciously to Alexander. "And who is this?" "This is Mr. Westfield," Lily explained earnestly. "He's going to give Mom a job so she can get better." The nurse's expression changed to one of recognition. "Alexander Westfield, the investor?" Her tone cooled considerably. "I'm afraid Ms. Morgan isn't receiving business visitors at the moment." "I understand," Alexander replied smoothly. "However, this is rather urgent. Ms. Morgan's daughter came to my office this morning regarding a position her mother had applied for." The nurse's eyebrows shot up as she looked down at Lily. "She what?" Lily shuffled her feet. "I just wanted to help," Alexander intervened. "Perhaps we could have a moment with Ms. Morgan. I assure you my intentions are professional." After a moment of deliberation, the nurse sighed. 5 minutes. She needs her rest. She bent down to Lily's level. "And you, young lady, are going to have a serious talk with your aunt about bus safety." Inside the room, Sarah Morgan lay with her eyes closed, an IV attached to her arm and monitors tracking her vitals. She was thin, too thin, with dark circles under her eyes, contrasting sharply with her pale skin. Yet even in this weakened state, Alexander could see she had once been beautiful. Her blonde hair, the same shade as Lily's, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Mommy?" Lily called softly, approaching the bed. "I brought someone to see you." Sarah's eyes fluttered open, focusing first on her daughter with a warm smile that quickly transformed to alarm when she noticed Alexander standing in the doorway. "Lily, what?" She struggled to sit up, wincing with the effort. "Mr. Westfield? I don't understand." "Your daughter came to my office this morning," Alexander explained, maintaining a respectful distance, "for your job interview." Sarah's face paled even further. "Oh my God." She turned to Lily. "You told me you were going to school early for the reading program." Her voice was a mixture of horror and disbelief. "I'm sorry, Mommy," Lily whispered, eyes downcast. "But you were so sad about missing the interview. I thought maybe I could help." Sarah reached for her daughter's hand, squeezing it gently. "Sweetheart, you can't just—" She trailed off, clearly too overwhelmed to continue. Alexander stepped forward. "Your daughter is quite remarkable, Ms. Morgan. She navigated downtown Boston alone, made it past my security, and presented your resume with more poise than many adult candidates I've interviewed." A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Westfield. I had no idea she would do something like this." "The position at Westfield Enterprises," Alexander continued, his voice businesslike. "You were scheduled to interview this morning?" Sarah nodded weakly. "Yes, I've been trying to find steady work since Hartwick Financial, since the acquisition." There was no accusation in her tone, merely exhaustion. "You worked directly with James Hartwick?" "For 5 years. He was." She hesitated, clearly choosing her words carefully in front of the man who had dismantled her former workplace. "He was a good employer." Alexander's expression revealed nothing. "And your current medical situation?" Sarah glanced at Lily, clearly reluctant to discuss her condition in front of her daughter. Understanding, Alexander turned to the child. "Lily, I noticed a vending machine near the nurse's station. Perhaps you could find us some water." He pulled a $20 bill from his wallet and handed it to her. Once Lily had left on her mission, Sarah sighed. "It's chronic fatigue syndrome, complicated by anemia and recurring pneumonia. The doctors believe it's stress-related, exacerbated by working multiple jobs while caring for Lily alone." She looked down at her hands. "I was hoping the position at your company might provide enough stability that I could focus on recovering." Alexander moved closer to the bed. "Ms. Morgan, I have to ask," Lily mentioned her father is not in the picture. A shadow crossed Sarah's face. "That's correct. He's not involved in our lives." She said she never met him, that he left before she was born. Sarah's gaze sharpened, a flash of protective instinct cutting through her exhaustion. "With all due respect, Mr. Westfield, I don't see how that's relevant to a job application." Alexander maintained his composed exterior, though his heart had begun racing inexplicably. "Forgive me for being direct, Ms. Morgan, but your daughter appears to be around 7 years old, which would place her birth approximately when?" "November 2017, Sarah answered cautiously. "Again, I fail to see." "And you worked at Hartwick Financial during that time?" "Yes." I had just started there. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Mr. Westfield, why are you asking about events from 7 years ago? Alexander took a measured breath. Ms. Morgan, I'm trying to understand a situation that has unexpected personal dimensions. He glanced toward the door to ensure Lily wasn't returning yet. Before I acquired Hartwick Financial, I was briefly employed there as a financial analyst. It would have been about 8 years ago for approximately 6 months. The color drained from Sarah's face. I worked under the name Alex West. He continued, watching her reaction closely. I was gathering information on Hartwick's operations for my own startup. Sarah's hand clutched the thin hospital blanket. That's impossible. Alex West moved to London. He took a position with an international firm. That's what everyone at Hartwick was told, yes. Alexander's voice remained steady, though his mind was racing through calculations and possibilities. But in reality, I was building Westfield Enterprises, preparing to return and acquire the company that had dismissed my innovative approaches. Sarah stared at him, realization dawning in her eyes. Ms. Morgan, Sarah, Alexander said, his professional facade cracking slightly. I knew a Sarah at Hartwick. She worked in administration. He paused, searching for the right word. We went on 3 dates, Sarah finished, her voice barely audible. And then you disappeared. I was called away suddenly when my investor moved up our timeline. I tried to call, but my phone was stolen that weekend. Sarah interrupted, the memory clearly still vivid. By the time I got a replacement, you were gone. James told everyone you'd accepted a position abroad. She shook her head in disbelief. I had no way to contact you. Alexander's gaze was intense now, the implications hanging heavy in the air between them. And Lily? She's 7 years old, born in November 2017, that would mean. The door swung open as Lily returned, proudly carrying 3 bottles of water and a chocolate bar. The machine gave me extra change. Both adults fell silent, regarding the child with new awareness. Alexander recovered first, accepting a water bottle with a polite, "Thank you." His mind was working rapidly, reassessing everything he thought he knew about his life. Lily, Sarah said gently, would you mind waiting outside for just another minute? The nurse can show you where the children's play area is. Once they were alone again, Sarah closed her eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. After you left, I discovered I was pregnant. I tried to find you. I even hired a private investigator, but Alex West seemed to have vanished completely. And Hartwick? Did you tell him? James was supportive. He gave me flexible hours, helped me find childcare. Her expression hardened slightly. When your company acquired Hartwick and eliminated our division, he tried to protect my position, but I refused any exceptions, Alexander finished, the full weight of his past decisions crashing down on him. The division was redundant to our operations. I didn't know Alexander Westfield was Alex West until this moment, Sarah said quietly. Even seeing your name in the business news, I never made the connection. You look different now. More polished, less hair, better suits, Alexander acknowledged. It was part of the transformation. He set down his untouched water bottle. Sarah, is Lily my daughter? The directness of the question hung in the air. Sarah met his gaze unflinchingly. Yes. The single word reverberated through the room. Why didn't you come forward when I acquired Hartwick? You must have needed support. Pride at first, Sarah admitted. Then fear that you'd try to take her from me. And honestly, the Alexander Westfield I read about in the business pages seemed nothing like the Alex I had known. She sighed. The man who bought and dismantled our company without a second thought for the employees didn't seem like someone who would welcome an unexpected child. The truth of her words stung. Alexander turned toward the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. The ruthless businessman staring back at him had spent years building walls that now threatened to collapse all at once. I would like a paternity test, he said finally, his back still to Sarah. Not because I doubt you, but because if Lily is indeed my daughter, I want there to be no legal ambiguities about my responsibilities. Sarah nodded, though he couldn't see it. I understand. He turned back to face her, his expression unreadable. Regardless of the results, the position you applied for at Westfield Enterprises is yours, if you still want it, with full health benefits, effective immediately. I don't want charity, Alexander. It's not charity, it's... He paused, struggling to articulate emotions he rarely acknowledged. It's a first step toward rectifying a situation I unknowingly helped create. Outside in the hallway, they could hear Lily's voice chattering animatedly with a nurse. She has your analytical mind, Sarah said softly. And your eyes. Alexander nodded, the magnitude of the day's revelation still sinking in. I'd like to get to know her. If that's acceptable to you. She's been inventing stories about her father her entire life, Sarah replied. The reality might be complicated for her to process. We'll take it slowly, Alexander agreed. But I want to be part of her life, Sarah. If she's mine, I've already missed 7 years. Sarah studied him, searching for traces of the young man she'd briefly known in the powerful executive standing before her. The Alex I knew wanted to change the world, not just conquer it. Is he still in there somewhere? Before Alexander could respond, Lily peeked around the door frame. Can I come back now? The nice nurse showed me pictures of her new puppy. Alexander and Sarah exchanged a meaningful glance, a silent agreement passing between them. Come in, sweetheart, Sarah called, holding out her hand to her daughter. Mr. Westfield and I have been having an important talk. Lily approached cautiously, sensing the charged atmosphere. Are you mad at me for going to his office? What you did was dangerous, and we'll definitely talk about that, Sarah said firmly. But no, I'm not mad. In fact, Mr. Westfield has offered me the job. Lily's face lit up with joy. Really? So we can stay in our apartment, and you won't have to work at the restaurant anymore? That's right, Sarah confirmed, her eyes filling with tears of relief. Alexander cleared his throat. Actually, Lily, I was hoping you might help me with something important. The child turned to him expectantly. Like a special mission? Exactly like that, Alexander replied, a genuine smile softening his features for the first time. You see, I need someone to show me the best ice cream place near this hospital. I thought perhaps you could be my guide. Lily's eyes widened. Now? While Mom rests? If your mother approves? Alexander said, glancing at Sarah for permission. Sarah nodded, understanding this for what it was, the beginning of a careful introduction. That sounds lovely. Just don't spoil your dinner. As Lily skipped toward the door, bursting with excitement at the prospect of ice cream, Alexander hung back for a moment. I'll have my personal physician consult on her case, he said quietly to Sarah, and I'll arrange for a private room. Alexander, Sarah began, her tone warning. Not charity, he insisted. Responsibility. There's a difference. He paused at the doorway. We'll talk more tomorrow. Get some rest, Sarah. As he joined Lily in the hallway, the child slipped her small hand into his without hesitation. The gesture, so simple and trusting, caused something to shift deep within Alexander's carefully ordered world. Mr. Westfield? Lily asked as they walked toward the elevator. Are you going to be my mom's new boss now? Alexander looked down at the child who might well be his daughter, seeing in her features echoes of his own. Something like that, he answered softly. But you can call me Alex. The following week passed in a blur of medical consultations, legal discussions, and cautious beginnings. Alexander had arranged for Sarah's transfer to a private room in the hospital's exclusive wing, despite her initial protests. The paternity test results, rushed through with the influence only wealth could command, confirmed what they already suspected. Lily was indeed his daughter. On a crisp autumn morning, Alexander stood at the window of his penthouse apartment, watching the sun rise over Boston Harbor. In his hand was the legal document his team of attorneys had prepared, papers acknowledging paternity and outlining his financial responsibilities to Lily. Yet something about the clinical language left him deeply unsettled. His phone buzzed with a message from James Hartwick, who had been surprisingly willing to meet with Alexander after hearing about the situation. The message contained only a time and a place, 10 a.m., Public Garden. An hour later, Alexander found himself walking along the winding paths of Boston's historic garden. The leaves were beginning to turn, splashing the landscape with vibrant reds and golds. He spotted Hartwick seated on a bench near the swan boats, looking much older than Alexander remembered. I'm surprised you agreed to meet, Alexander said by way of greeting. James Hartwick, once his rival in the business world, offered a wan smile. Sarah asked me to. She seems to think you're having some sort of moral awakening. Alexander sat beside the older man, maintaining a respectful distance. I don't know what I'm having, to be honest. Everything I thought I knew about my life has been upended in the span of a week. Welcome to parenthood, Hartwick replied with a dry chuckle. They sat in silence for a moment, watching a young family feed the ducks at the pond's edge. I didn't know, Alexander finally said, about Sarah's pregnancy, about Lily. I believe you, Hartwick acknowledged, though it doesn't change the fact that your actions, your company's acquisition and subsequent gutting of my firm, put Sarah in an impossible position. I'm trying to make that right. With money? Hartwick shook his head. That girl doesn't need your wealth, Alexander. She needs a father. The bluntness of the statement caught Alexander off guard. I'm not sure I know how to be that, he admitted. My own father was. Distant at best. Then learn, Hartwick said simply. Sarah told me you've been visiting the hospital, taking Lily for ice cream, buying her books. He nodded approvingly. That's a start. Alexander stared at the ground. I've built my entire identity around Westfield Enterprises. I've sacrificed relationships, friendships, anything that didn't serve that singular purpose. And now you find out there's someone, more important. Hartwick finished for him. It's humbling, isn't it? Terrifying, Alexander corrected. Hartwick studied him for a long moment. You know, when you worked for me briefly as Alex West, I saw something in you. Brilliance, certainly, but also a genuine desire to improve systems, to make things work better for people. Somewhere along the way, you seem to have lost sight of the for people part. Alexander couldn't deny the truth in those words. Sarah said Lily has been asking questions. Hartwick continued. About why you're suddenly in their lives. Children are perceptive. She knows something significant has changed. We agreed to tell her gradually, to let her get to know me first before explaining. Alexander trailed off, the enormity of the conversation they would eventually need to have with Lily weighing heavily on him. Don't wait too long, Hartwick advised. Kids appreciate honesty, even when the truth is complicated. Alexander nodded, taking in the wisdom of a man he had once dismissed as outdated in his business approach. Can I ask you something, James? Why did you help Sarah all those years? You went beyond what most employers would do. Hartwick's gaze drifted to the family by the pond again. My daughter died when she was 26. Cancer. She left behind a 4-year-old son who my wife and I helped raise. His voice grew softer with memory. When I saw Sarah struggling alone, pregnant and determined to make a life for her child, I couldn't not help. It was that simple. For the first time, Alexander saw James Hartwick not as a business rival, but as a man shaped by his own losses and choices. I've made mistakes, he acknowledged quietly. We all have, Hartwick replied. The measure of a person isn't in avoiding mistakes, but in how they rectify them. He stood, signaling the end of their conversation. Sarah is being discharged tomorrow. She mentioned you've arranged a place for them to stay. A condo in Back Bay. Temporary, until she decides what she wants long-term. Alexander rose as well. I'm not trying to buy my way into their lives, James. I just want them to be comfortable while we figure this out. I believe your intentions are good, Hartwick said, extending his hand. But remember, that little girl has formed a complete identity without you. Tread carefully with her heart. As they shook hands, Alexander felt a weight shift within him, not lifting exactly, but redistributing itself into something more bearable. Later that afternoon, Alexander found himself in a children's bookstore in Cambridge, a place so far removed from his usual haunts that he felt almost like an imposter. He had come seeking a gift for Lily, something meaningful for her upcoming birthday in November. Can I help you find something? Asked a cheerful employee, approaching as he stood bewildered before shelves of colorful titles. I'm looking for a book for my... Alexander paused, the word daughter still foreign on his tongue. For a 7-year-old girl who likes science and making up stories. I know just the thing, the woman replied, leading him to a display of books about young female scientists and explorers. As Alexander browsed the selection, his phone rang. Sarah's number appearing on the screen. He answered immediately. Alexander? Her voice sounded strained. Is Lily with you? His heart rate quickened. No, I haven't seen her today. Isn't she at the hospital with you? She was. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. She went to get a snack from the vending machine an hour ago and never came back. The nurses are searching the building, but the fear in her voice was palpable. I'm on my way, Alexander said, already heading for the door. Have they checked the children's playroom, the cafeteria? Everywhere. She's not in the hospital. Alexander's mind raced through possibilities as he hurried to his car. The ice cream shop we visited, it's only 2 blocks from the hospital. Maybe she tried to go there. The police are on their way, but I thought if she was trying to find you. Sarah couldn't finish the sentence. I'll find her, Sarah, Alexander promised, pulling into traffic with uncharacteristic urgency. Stay where you are in case she returns. For the next hour, Alexander searched the neighborhood surrounding Boston Memorial, showing Lily's photo to shopkeepers and pedestrians. The autumn day that had seemed so beautiful earlier now felt ominous, the falling leaves and lengthening shadows taking on a sinister quality as the afternoon waned. When his phone rang again, he answered without checking the caller ID. Sarah, any news? Mr. Westfield? A small, tremulous voice responded instead. It's Lily. Relief flooded through him so intensely that he had to lean against a nearby wall. Lily, where are you? Your mother and I have been worried sick. I'm at your office, she replied, her voice tearful. The nice lady at the front desk let me use her phone. Alexander closed his eyes briefly, thanking whatever forces had kept her safe. Stay right there. I'm coming to get you. 20 minutes later, he strode into the Westfield Enterprises lobby to find Lily seated in a plush visitor's chair, her small backpack clutched to her chest, tear tracks visible on her cheeks. When she saw him, she jumped up and ran toward him without hesitation. What surprised Alexander most was his own instinctive response, dropping to one knee and opening his arms to receive her. The child crashed into him, burying her face against his shoulder as fresh tears came. I'm sorry, she hiccuped. I just wanted to find you. Alexander held her carefully, acutely aware of her fragility and his own inexperience with such emotions. It's all right, you're safe now. But you scared your mother terribly. We need to call her right away. After assuring Sarah that Lily was safe and promising to bring her directly to the hospital, Alexander guided Lily to his private elevator. Once inside, he knelt again to her level. Lily, why did you come looking for me? Your mother said you disappeared from the hospital. The child's eyes, so like his own, met his with surprising intensity. I heard Mom talking to Uncle James on the phone about you being my dad. Alexander felt as though the air had been sucked from the elevator. Of all the scenarios he had imagined for this conversation, this was not among them. Standing in his corporate headquarters with a tearful 7-year-old who had pieced together the truth on her own. I see, he managed, struggling to find the right words. And how do you feel about what you heard? Lily's expression was serious beyond her years. Is it true? Are you really my dad? The directness of children, Alexander was quickly learning, could be more disarming than any business negotiation. Yes, Lily, it's true. I only found out myself when you came to my office last week. Did you know about me before, when I was a baby? No, Alexander answered honestly. If I had known about you, I would have been part of your life from the beginning. Lily processed this information with a thoughtful frown. So you didn't leave because you didn't want me? The question pierced Alexander more deeply than he could have anticipated. Absolutely not. I left before I knew your mother was going to have you. It was a misunderstanding between grown-ups. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, but neither of them moved to exit. Why did you help us? Lily asked, her voice small but determined. Is it just because because we're related? Alexander considered his answer carefully, aware that this moment would likely shape their relationship for years to come. At first, yes. When I realized who you might be, I wanted to help because it was the right thing to do. He paused, searching for words that would make sense to a 7-year-old. But then I got to know you. How brave you are. How smart. How much you love your mom. And I wanted to help because of who you are, not just because of who I am to you. Lily studied him with that uncanny perceptiveness children sometimes possess. Do you want to be my dad now? For real? I do, Alexander answered without hesitation, surprised by the certainty he felt. Very much. But I understand if that's confusing or scary for you. A little scary, Lily admitted. But also, kind of amazing. Like in the stories where the princess finds out she's really special all along. A smile tugged at Alexander's lips. You were always special, Lily. Long before I came along. The child seemed to consider this. If you're my dad, does that mean I get to live in your big tower? Like Rapunzel? Alexander laughed softly. We'll have to see what your mother thinks about that. But for now, I've found a nice place where you both can stay while your mom gets better. He stood and offered his hand. Ready to go back to the hospital? Your mom is very worried. Lily nodded, slipping her hand into his with the same easy trust she had shown from the beginning. As they rode down in the elevator, she leaned against his side, clearly exhausted from her adventure. Mr. Westfield? She asked sleepily. If you're my dad, what should I call you? The question caught Alexander off guard. That's up to you, Lily. Whatever feels comfortable. She nodded thoughtfully. I think I'll just call you Alex for now, until I get used to it. That sounds perfect, he replied, surprised by the emotion welling in his throat. When they arrived at the hospital, Sarah was waiting anxiously in her room, her face lighting up with relief as Lily ran to her. The reunion was tearful, with appropriate scolding mixed with grateful embraces. Once Lily had been settled with a nurse who promised to show her the hospital's aquarium, with strict instructions not to leave the woman's sight, Sarah turned to Alexander. She knows, he said simply. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. I was going to tell her together with you when the time was right. Children have a way of determining their own right time, Alexander observed. She overheard your conversation with James. Sarah sighed. How did she take it? Remarkably well, considering she's resilient like her mother. Alexander paused. She asked if she could call me Alex for now, until she gets used to the idea. A soft smile touched Sarah's lips. That sounds like her, practical even in extraordinary circumstances. She studied him. And you? How are you handling all of this? Alexander considered the question seriously. A week ago, my life was exactly as I had designed it, ordered, profitable, predictable. Now nothing is certain except that I have a daughter who needs me to be better than I've been. He met Sarah's gaze directly. It's the most terrifying and exhilarating challenge I've ever faced. Sarah's expression softened with something like understanding. Welcome to parenthood, Alexander Westfield. As if on cue, Lily's laughter echoed from down the hallway. Bright, uninhibited, and full of the boundless possibility that only childhood contains. The sound seemed to bridge the gulf between the separate lives they had lived until now, offering a glimpse of the future that might yet be built together. I know I have a lot to learn, Alexander acknowledged, and a lot to prove, to both of you. Just be present, Sarah advised quietly. That's what she needs most. Not your wealth or your influence, just you, showing up day after day. She hesitated before adding, it's what I needed 7 years ago, too. The honesty of her statement hung in the air between them, not an accusation but a truth that needed acknowledgement before they could move forward. I'm here now, Alexander said finally, and I'm not going anywhere. As Lily came bounding back into the room, chattering excitedly about the striped fish she had seen, Alexander felt something unfamiliar take root within him, a sense of purpose beyond balance sheets and acquisitions. For the first time in his driven, ambitious life, Alexander Westfield found himself measuring success not in dollars, but in the tentative trust beginning to bloom in his daughter's eyes. The Back Bay condominium Alexander had arranged for Sarah and Lily was a far cry from their previous apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the Charles River, while modern furnishings created an atmosphere of understated luxury. For Lily, the most exciting feature was the building's indoor pool, a wonderland she had previously experienced only during rare community center visits. 2 weeks after Sarah's discharge from the hospital, Alexander arrived at the condo carrying a small wrapped package. He had taken to visiting every other day, careful not to overwhelm them while still establishing his presence in their lives. Today's visit held special significance. It marked 1 month since Lily had first appeared in his office, changing the trajectory of 3 lives in the process. Sarah opened the door, looking noticeably healthier than she had in the hospital. Regular meals, proper rest, and reduced stress had brought color back to her cheeks, and a brightness to her eyes that reminded Alexander of the young woman he had briefly known years ago. "She's been waiting by the window for the past hour," Sarah said by way of greeting, nodding toward Lily, who had spotted his car from her perch and was now racing to the door. "Alex!" Lily exclaimed, practically vibrating with excitement. "Did you bring it? The surprise you promised?" Alexander smiled, still adjusting to the child's unfiltered enthusiasm. His own childhood had been so different, formal, restrained, with emotions carefully managed and expressions of joy considered unseemly. "Hello to you too," he replied, presenting the small package. "And yes, I brought something special." Lily accepted the gift with reverence, carefully untying the ribbon before removing the wrapping paper without tearing it, a habit Alexander recognized from his own methodical approach to tasks. Inside was a leather-bound journal with her initials embossed in gold on the cover. LMW. Lily traced the letters with her fingertip. "What's the W for?" Alexander glanced at Sarah, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Permission for what they had discussed earlier by phone. "Westfield," he answered quietly. "Lily Morgan Westfield, if that's all right with you." The child's eyes widened as she processed this development. "You mean like your name?" "Yes. Your mother and I have been talking, and we've filed papers to update your birth certificate. Legally, Westfield is part of your name now, but only if you want it to be." Lily clutched the journal to her chest, her expression serious as she considered this new identity. "Does this mean you're officially my dad now, for real and forever?" Something tightened in Alexander's chest, an unfamiliar ache that was neither pleasant nor painful, but profoundly moving. "I've always been your father, Lily. But yes, now it's official, on paper, and more importantly, in my heart." The child launched herself at him with such force that Alexander nearly lost his balance. He caught her in an embrace that was becoming more natural with each visit, though still tinged with his lingering awkwardness around physical affection. "I've been practicing writing it," Lily confessed against his shoulder. "Lily Westfield, on all my school papers." "Speaking of school," Sarah interjected gently, "why don't you show Alex your science project while I finish dinner?" Lily disentangled herself from Alexander's arms, grabbed his hand, and pulled him toward her bedroom, chattering about the solar system model she was constructing. Alexander followed, listening intently to her explanation of planetary orbits and cosmic distances. Her room was a blend of her previous life and new possibilities. Beloved stuffed animals arranged precisely on a new bedspread, well-worn books sharing space with recent additions on custom shelves. On her desk sat a half-completed solar system with papier-mâché planets in various stages of painting. "Neptune is my favorite," Lily informed him seriously, holding up a blue sphere. "It has the strongest winds in the whole solar system. Over 1,200 miles per hour, Alexander noted, impressed by her choice. "Most children prefer Mars or Saturn." Lily shrugged. "Everyone likes those. But Neptune is special because it's hard to see. You need really strong telescopes." She placed the planet carefully in its position. "Kind of like you, I guess." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "I'm like Neptune?" "Mm-hmm. You were there the whole time, but nobody could see you." Her tone was matter-of-fact, without accusation. "And now I can." The simple profundity of her statement left Alexander momentarily speechless. While he searched for an appropriate response, Lily continued working on her project, seemingly unaware of the emotional impact of her words. "I have something else for you," he finally said, reaching into his coat pocket. He withdrew a small velvet box and opened it to reveal an antique silver compass on a chain. "This belonged to my grandfather. He gave it to me when I was about your age." Lily gasped, reaching out to touch the compass with careful fingers. "It's beautiful. Does it still work?" "It does. He told me it would always help me find my way, even when the path wasn't clear." Alexander gently removed it from the box. "I thought you might like to have it now." "But it's special to you," Lily protested, even as her eyes remained fixed on the gleaming silver. "That's why I want you to have it," Alexander explained, helping her fasten it around her neck. "Special things should be shared with special people." Lily touched the compass reverently. "I'll take really good care of it, I promise." From the doorway, Sarah observed their interaction silently, a complex mixture of emotions playing across her features. When Alexander looked up and caught her watching, she smiled faintly before announcing that dinner was ready. The meal was simple but well prepared: roast chicken, vegetables, and fresh bread. As they ate, Lily dominated the conversation with stories from her new school, where she had started the previous week. The prestigious private institution had accepted her mid-semester after Alexander pulled several strings, an action that had prompted another discussion with Sarah about boundaries and parenting approaches. Ms. Peterson says I'm advanced in math, Lily reported proudly. She gave me special problems to solve. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Sarah responded. But remember, it's important to help your classmates too, not just race ahead. Alexander observed this gentle guidance with interest. His own father would have demanded excellence without qualification, viewing academic achievement as the only acceptable outcome. Sarah's approach, celebrating success while emphasizing compassion, was foreign to his experience but clearly effective, given Lily's balanced confidence. I have something to discuss with both of you, Alexander said when there was a lull in the conversation. About Westfield Enterprises. Sarah tensed slightly. Has something changed with the position? In a manner of speaking, Alexander set down his fork, choosing his words carefully. I've been doing some thinking about the company's direction, about my priorities. Grown-up business stuff. Lily sighed dramatically, reaching for her water glass. Actually, this concerns you too, Alexander told her. I've decided to restructure the company, starting with reinstating the division from Hartwick Financial that was eliminated during the acquisition. Sarah stared at him. Alexander, that's dozens of jobs. The cost alone is substantial, yes, but so is the human cost of those layoffs. He turned to Lily. Do you know what perspective means? The child nodded. Like in art class, when you see things from different angles. Exactly. Meeting you has given me a new perspective. On my business. On what matters. Alexander looked back at Sarah. James Hartwick was right about me. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of why I started building Westfield in the first place. It wasn't just to make money or prove something to the world. What was it for then? Sarah asked quietly. To create something meaningful. Something that helped people solve problems. He shook his head ruefully. Somewhere along the way, profits became the only metric that mattered. Lily, though clearly not following all the business details, sensed the importance of the moment. Are you going to be nicer to people at work now? A startled laugh escaped Alexander. Yes, Lily, I suppose that's one way of putting it. He reached across the table to cover Sarah's hand with his own. The position I offered you has also been reconsidered. If you're interested, I'd like you to head the new Community Impact Division, overseeing charitable initiatives and employee support programs. Sarah withdrew her hand, her expression cautious. Alexander, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not a charity case. I have administrative experience, yes, but nothing that qualifies me to run a division. You managed to raise an exceptional child while working multiple jobs and dealing with chronic illness, Alexander countered. That demonstrates more leadership, resource management, and resilience than most of my executive team combined. It's different, Sarah protested. Is it? Alexander challenged gently. You've navigated systems that were designed to make you fail. Healthcare, housing, employment. Who better to help redesign those systems from within? Sarah remained silent, clearly torn between opportunity and pride. Sleep on it, Alexander suggested, backing away from the intensity of the moment. There's no rush to decide. Later, after Lily had been tucked into bed with a story and had fallen asleep clutching her new compass, Alexander and Sarah sat in the living room, the city lights twinkling below them. She wants to believe in fairy tales, Sarah said softly, breaking the companionable silence. The lost father who returns, the happy ending where everything works out perfectly. And you don't? Alexander asked. Sarah sighed, drawing her knees up to her chest in a gesture that made her seem suddenly vulnerable. I've spent 7 years in the real world, Alexander. Single motherhood, financial struggles, health crises, none of it has a magical solution. Not even you. I never claimed to be magical, he replied with a faint smile, just determined to do right by both of you. And what does right look like to you? Sarah challenged. Moving us into luxury housing, enrolling Lily in an elite school, offering me a position I'm not qualified for? These aren't solutions, Alexander. They're bandages on deeper wounds. Alexander absorbed her criticism thoughtfully. What would help then? Tell me, and I'll listen. The directness of his question seemed to catch Sarah off guard. After a moment's hesitation, she spoke more candidly than she had since their reunion. Stability matters more than luxury. Lily needs routine, consistency, and the knowledge that the people in her life aren't going to disappear. Sarah's gaze was steady. Can you promise that? Not just now, while everything is new and interesting, but in a year? 5 years? When board meetings conflict with school plays? Or when shareholders question your priorities? The challenge hit uncomfortably close to Alexander's own unspoken fears. His entire adult life had been structured around work. The concept of placing family obligations first was foreign territory. I can promise to try, he answered honestly. To learn. To do better than my own father did. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. Sarah, I've spent my career calculating risks and returns. This, being Lily's father, being part of your lives, is the first thing I've ever wanted that can't be quantified on a spreadsheet. Something in Sarah's expression softened. She asks about you on the days you don't visit. Wonders what you're doing, if you're thinking about her. I think about her constantly, Alexander admitted. About both of you. A charged silence fell between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. It's getting late, Sarah said finally, rising from the couch. You should probably go. Alexander nodded, standing as well. At the door, he paused. Sarah, about the position, regardless of your decision, I want you to know it wasn't offered out of pity or obligation. You have insights and perspectives my company desperately needs. I'll think about it, she promised. Good night, Alexander. As he rode the elevator down to the lobby, Alexander reflected on how dramatically his life had changed in just 1 month. The man who had entered Westfield Enterprises that morning when Lily first appeared would hardly recognize the man leaving Sarah's condominium tonight, altered not by external circumstances, but by an internal shifting of priorities that felt simultaneously terrifying and right. In his car, he found a folded piece of paper that had been slipped into his coat pocket without his knowledge. Opening it, he discovered a drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands, one small with pigtails, one medium with long hair, and one tall with a tie. Above them, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, were the words, "My family." Alexander drove home with the drawing on the passenger seat beside him, a tangible reminder of everything he now had to lose, and everything he had to gain, by opening his carefully guarded heart to the messy, unquantifiable reality of being a father. November arrived with biting winds and the promise of snow, the Boston sky a perpetual sheet of hammered steel. In the 5 weeks since discovering Lily's existence, Alexander had made substantial changes both personally and professionally. The reinstated Hartwick division was operational again, with several former employees rehired. Sarah had eventually accepted the community impact position, though she had insisted on starting at the bottom of the corporate ladder and working her way up, a stipulation Alexander had reluctantly accepted. Lily's 8th birthday was approaching, and Alexander found himself immersed in the unfamiliar territory of children's party planning. After learning that Lily had never had a proper birthday celebration, just small gatherings with Sarah and occasionally her Aunt Jenny, he had become determined to make this year special. Nothing extravagant, Sarah had warned when he broached the subject. She doesn't need to be overwhelmed. Yet Alexander's concept of not extravagant differed significantly from Sarah's, a discrepancy that became apparent when he arrived at the condominium one evening with 3 different party planners in tow, each armed with elaborate presentation boards. Sarah's expression upon opening the door spoke volumes. Before you say anything, Alexander began, ushering the planners into the living room, this is just a consultation. No decisions will be made without your approval. Lily, who had been working on homework at the dining table, abandoned her math problems at the sight of the colorful presentation boards. Is this for my birthday? She gasped, eyes wide with excitement. Just some ideas, Alexander assured her, catching Sarah's warning glance. Your mother has final say on everything. For the next hour, the planners presented increasingly elaborate concepts, from science-themed extravaganzas at the Museum of Science to underwater adventures at the New England Aquarium. Lily watched in wide-eyed wonder, while Sarah's expression grew progressively more strained. When the planners had departed with promises to email detailed proposals, Sarah pulled Alexander onto the balcony, closing the door firmly behind them. "This is exactly what I asked you not to do," she said, her voice low but intense. "We agreed on a small gathering at the community center near our old neighborhood, with a few of her friends from school." Alexander frowned. "I just wanted her to have options, to make the day memorable." "Memorable doesn't have to mean excessive," Sarah countered. "Alexander, listen to me carefully. Lily doesn't need grand gestures. She needs to know she matters to you, not because you can throw money at her birthday, but because you understand who she is and what she values." "And what exactly does she value?" Alexander asked, frustration edging his tone. "Because from where I stand, I'm trying to give her experiences she's never had before. Opportunities most children would dream of. That's just it. She's not most children." Sarah's voice softened. "Lily finds joy in simple things. Last year, her favorite gift was a constellation nightlight that projected stars onto her ceiling. We spent hours identifying patterns and making up our own stories about them." She met his gaze directly. "She doesn't need spectacle, Alexander. She needs connection." The truth of Sarah's words resonated uncomfortably. For all his efforts over the past weeks, Alexander had indeed relied heavily on his wealth and influence, rather than the more challenging work of truly knowing his daughter. "I'm not very good at this," he admitted quietly, staring out at the city lights. "My father showed affection through material things. It's the only model I have." Sarah's expression softened. "Then it's time to create a new model, one that works for the three of us." The three of us caught Alexander's attention. It was the first time Sarah had referred to them as a unit, however loosely defined. "I want to get this right," he said, turning to face her. "For Lily, and for you. Then start by asking what she wants," Sarah suggested. "Not what you think she should want." Inside, they found Lily sprawled on the living room floor, drawing elaborate party invitations based on the planners' presentations. "Lily," Alexander began, sitting cross-legged beside her in a posture that would have been unthinkable for him 2 months ago. "If you could have any kind of birthday celebration, any kind at all, what would you choose?" The child looked up in surprise, clearly having assumed the decision had already been made. "Anything?" "Anything within reason," Sarah amended, joining them on the floor. Lily considered the question seriously, tapping her marker against her chin. "Could we have it at the planetarium, the one at the Science Museum, just the small one, not the whole museum?" She looked between them hopefully. "And maybe instead of a big party, we could just invite Zoe and Maya from school, and Mr. James, and Aunt Jenny." Alexander blinked in surprise. "That's all? Just the planetarium and 5 guests?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "And then maybe after we could go back to our apartment and have cake? Not the fancy kind with the weird fruit, just chocolate with vanilla frosting like Mom makes." "Our apartment?" Sarah repeated, glancing at Alexander with a bemused expression. "This apartment," Lily clarified. "Where we live now." She hesitated before adding, "Maybe. Maybe Alex could stay for dinner too, if he's not too busy with work." The hopeful question pierced Alexander's heart more effectively than any business negotiation ever had. "I would be honored to stay for dinner, Lily, and I'm never too busy for your birthday." The child beamed, clearly pleased with this outcome. "Can I go finish my math homework now, Ms. Peterson said I can start the advanced worksheets if I finish the regular ones early." When Lily had returned to the dining table, Alexander turned to Sarah with a rueful smile. "Well, that was humbling." "Welcome to parenthood," Sarah replied, echoing the phrase that seemed to define his journey these past weeks. "Where the most elaborate plans are usually trumped by the simplest desires." "The planetarium and chocolate cake," Alexander mused. "I think I can manage that without overcomplicating things." "You say that now," Sarah teased, "but I fully expect to veto at least 3 of your enhancements before the big day." This easy banter was new between them, a fragile bridge being built over the complicated landscape of their shared past and uncertain future. Alexander found himself increasingly drawn to these moments, to the person Sarah had become in the years they'd been apart. "Thank you," he said suddenly. Sarah looked at him questioningly. "For what?" "For raising her so well. For being patient with me while I figure this out." He hesitated before adding, "For giving me a second chance I probably don't deserve." Before Sarah could respond, Lily called from the dining room. "Mom, Alex, can you help me with this word problem? It's about a train leaving Chicago, and I've never been to Chicago." The moment broke, but the warmth of it lingered as they joined Lily at the table, working together to solve the problem of trains departing from distant stations, each traveling at different speeds toward an eventual meeting point. Lily's birthday fell on a Saturday, dawning crisp and clear with the season's first dusting of snow. Alexander arrived at the condominium early, arms laden with carefully wrapped packages that Sarah had helped him select. Books about astronomy, a telescope suitable for beginners, and a locket containing a family photograph from the 1940s that had belonged to Alexander's grandmother. The day unfolded exactly as Lily had requested. A private showing at the planetarium with her small circle of loved ones, followed by a cozy dinner at home. James Hartwick attended, along with Sarah's sister Jenny and Lily's two friends from school. The simplicity of the celebration allowed for genuine connection, with Alexander finding himself engaged in actual conversations rather than merely orchestrating an event. As evening approached and the guests departed, Lily sat surrounded by her modest pile of gifts, examining each with genuine appreciation. Alexander, watching her methodical unwrapping, was struck by how much he saw of himself in her careful movements and thoughtful responses. "She catalogs everything in her mind," Sarah remarked quietly, noticing his observation. "Makes connections between gifts and givers. She'll remember who gave her what for years." "Another trait she shares with me," Alexander noted, "though I suspect she uses it more kindly than I have." Sarah smiled. "She has your analytical mind, but a heart entirely her own." After Lily had been tucked into bed, her room aglow with the light of her new telescope directed at the night sky, Alexander helped Sarah clear away the remains of the party. "I have something for you too," he said as they finished washing the last of the dishes. "Not a birthday gift, obviously, but something I've been working on." Sarah dried her hands on a towel, looking at him curiously. "Alexander, you don't need to—" "Please," he interrupted gently. "This is important." From his briefcase, he withdrew a leather portfolio and handed it to her. Inside was a legal document bearing the Westfield Enterprises letterhead. "What is this?" Sarah asked, scanning the first page. "A trust for Lily," Alexander explained. "But not what you're thinking. It's structured so that she can't access the principal until she's 30, with the exception of educational expenses." He pointed to a specific clause. "What makes this different is that 15% of the annual interest is allocated to a scholarship fund for children of single parents, with preference given to families affected by corporate restructuring." Sarah looked up from the document, clearly surprised. "You created a scholarship fund based on our situation?" Alexander nodded. "Your perspective has been illuminating. The trust ensures Lily's future, yes, but it also acknowledges the broader impact of business decisions on families like yours." He paused. "Like ours." "This is—" Sarah seemed at a loss for words. "This is thoughtful, Alexander. Truly. There's more," he continued, turning to the last page. "I've established a healthcare initiative through the company, comprehensive coverage for all employees, including part-time staff, with specific provisions for chronic conditions." He met her gaze. "No one should have to choose between medical care and keeping their home." Sarah studied him, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. "You really have been listening, haven't you?" "I'm trying," he acknowledged. "It's a work in progress, but then, so am I." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sounds of the city below. "Would you like some coffee?" Sarah offered finally. "I have a feeling there's more we should discuss." Alexander nodded, following her into the kitchen where he leaned against the counter, watching as she moved efficiently through the familiar routine of measuring beans and heating water. "I've been thinking about Lily's future," he began. "About stability and consistency, like you mentioned before." Sarah nodded, her attention on the coffee preparation. "She's adjusted well to the changes so far, but children need to feel secure in their foundations." "Exactly. which is why I've been considering a more permanent arrangement. Alexander took a deep breath. I'd like us to consider living together, as a family. Sarah's hand stilled over the coffee maker. Alexander. Not romantically, he clarified quickly. Unless, well, that's not what I'm proposing right now. I'm talking about co-parenting under one roof, for Lily's benefit. Sarah turned to face him, her expression guarded. That's a significant step. I know. And I understand if you're not ready for it. Alexander maintained steady eye contact. But I want Lily to have both of us present in her daily life. To know that her family, unconventional as it may be, is solid. Where would this co-parenting arrangement take place? Sarah asked carefully. Here, your penthouse? Neither, Alexander replied. I found a house in Brookline. It has separate wings, privacy for each of us, but shared family spaces. 3 acres of land, good schools nearby. He pulled out his phone to show her photographs. It's close enough to the city for commuting, but removed from the corporate environment. A fresh start, in a way. Sarah examined the images, her expression unreadable. You've given this a lot of thought. I have. Alexander set his phone aside. Sarah, I know this isn't conventional. Nothing about our situation is. But I've missed 7 years of Lily's life already. I don't want to miss any more by being a part-time visitor in her world. The coffee maker beeped, breaking the tension of the moment. Sarah poured 2 cups, adding cream to hers while leaving his black, remembering his preference from years ago. And what happens when you meet someone? She asked, handing him a mug. When you want to build a life with another woman? How does this arrangement work then? The question caught Alexander off guard. In truth, he hadn't considered romantic entanglements in his planning. His focus had been solely on creating stability for Lily. I suppose we would address that if and when it occurs, he answered slowly. The same would apply if you met someone. Sarah sipped her coffee, considering his words. It's an unconventional proposal. For an unconventional family, Alexander countered. Will you at least think about it? Visit the property before deciding. After a moment, Sarah nodded. I'll think about it. For Lily's sake. Later that night, as Alexander drove home through the quiet streets of Boston, his phone chimed with a message from Sarah. It contained no words, only a photograph of Lily fast asleep, clutching both the silver compass he had given her and the locket from his grandmother. Something shifted in Alexander's chest, a sensation of pieces falling into place, of a pathway clearing before him. The relentless ambition that had driven him for years seemed to recalibrate in that moment, finding a new focal point in the sleeping child who carried his DNA, his name, and increasingly, his heart. The Brookline house exceeded even Alexander's expectations. Built in the 1920s, the colonial revival sat on a gentle slope surrounded by mature trees, its symmetrical facade and columned portico exuding a sense of permanence that appealed to him on a fundamental level. Inside, the renovated spaces blended historic character with modern convenience. High ceilings and original woodwork complemented by updated systems and contemporary finishes. Alexander stood in the spacious kitchen, watching through French doors as Lily explored the backyard. Sarah moved through the main floor with a measured pace, taking in details with a thoughtful expression. It's beautiful, she acknowledged, running her hand along a built-in bookshelf. But it's also enormous, Alexander. The heating costs alone are not a concern, he finished gently. Sarah, I understand your instinct to worry about practical matters. It's what kept you and Lily afloat all these years. But this is something I can provide without strain, and it would give Lily a stable home environment with both of us present. Sarah sighed, moving to the window to watch Lily, who had discovered a tire swing hanging from a massive oak tree. She loves it already, I can tell. And you? Alexander asked, joining her at the window. What do you think beyond the practical considerations? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. It feels like a home, she admitted finally. The kind of place where memories are made. She turned to face him directly. But I need to be clear about boundaries, Alexander. If we do this, if we try this co-parenting arrangement, we need defined spaces and expectations. Of course, he agreed. The East Wing would be entirely yours and Lily's. I would take the West Wing with the home office. Shared spaces in between, with agreed-upon privacy protocols. And financially? Sarah pressed. I insist on contributing, even if it's not equally. Alexander had anticipated this concern. The house would be placed in a family trust with both of us as trustees and Lily as the beneficiary. You can contribute what you're comfortable with to a household account for daily expenses. He hesitated before adding, "This isn't about money, Sarah. It's about creating the most nurturing environment for Lily." Sarah nodded slowly. "I need to see the schools before making any final decision." Alexander smiled, recognizing this as Sarah's way of signaling tentative acceptance. "I've arranged tours for next week, both public and private options, as you requested." As December approached, preparations for the move to Brookline occupied much of their collective energy. Lily, thrilled by the prospect of having both parents under one roof, threw herself into planning her new bedroom with characteristic methodical enthusiasm. She created detailed diagrams of furniture placement and color schemes, presenting them to both parents for approval. The transition at Westfield Enterprises was proceeding more smoothly than Alexander had anticipated. The reinstated Hartwick division was already showing promising results, while Sarah's community impact initiatives had garnered positive press and employee feedback. James Hartwick, who had initially regarded Alexander's transformation with skepticism, had become a valuable advisor, bringing perspective and institutional wisdom to the restructured organization. On a snowy afternoon in mid-December, Alexander found himself alone in the Brookline house, overseeing the delivery of furniture for the family spaces. Sarah and Lily were attending a holiday concert at Lily's school, providing him a rare opportunity to prepare a surprise he had been planning for weeks. The attic space above Lily's bedroom suite had captured her imagination during their first visit to the house. "It would make the perfect observatory," she had declared, peering up at the small dormer windows. Alexander had filed away this observation, quietly consulting with architects and specialty contractors to transform the space into a child's astronomical haven. Today, the finishing touches were being installed, a retractable roof section that would allow her telescope clear access to the night sky, comfortable seating for stargazing, and wall murals depicting the constellations with scientific accuracy. The contractors had just departed when Alexander's phone rang, James Hartwick's name appearing on the screen. "James," Alexander greeted him, "how are the projections looking for the new division?" "That's not why I'm calling, Alexander." Hartwick's voice was grave. "There's been a situation at Lily's school. Sarah asked me to reach you." Alexander's blood ran cold. "What kind of situation? Is Lily all right?" "She's fine physically," Hartwick assured him. "But there was an incident during the holiday concert. Another child's parent made some unfortunate comments about Lily's family situation within her hearing." Alexander was already grabbing his coat. "What exactly was said?" "I think that's best coming from Sarah," Hartwick replied diplomatically. "She's taken Lily home, to the condominium, not Brookline. She asked if you could meet them there." 20 minutes later, Alexander arrived at the Back Bay building, taking the elevator directly to their floor. Sarah opened the door before he could knock, her expression strained. "She's in her room," Sarah said quietly. "She asked for some time alone, which isn't like her." Alexander removed his coat, anxiety tightening his chest. "James called, but he didn't give me details." "What happened exactly?" Sarah led him to the living room, speaking in hushed tones. During the reception after the concert, one of the mothers, Vanessa Caldwell, her daughter Brianna is in Lily's class, made some comments to another parent. She didn't realize Lily was around the corner listening. "What kind of comments?" Alexander pressed. Sarah's expression hardened. "She referred to me as the gold digger who trapped Westfield with a convenient child. She implied that our situation was some sort of calculated scheme on my part." Alexander's jaw clenched. "And Lily heard this?" "Enough of it." Sarah sank onto the couch. "She came running to me in tears, asking why the woman said I only wanted your money, and if that meant you wouldn't want to be her dad anymore." A cold fury settled over Alexander, the kind of focused anger he typically reserved for boardroom battles. "Mrs. Caldwell clearly doesn't understand the facts of our situation." "The facts aren't the issue, Alexander," Sarah said wearily. "The damage is done. Lily is questioning everything now. Our motivations, our arrangement, whether your interest in her is genuine or obligatory." "That's absurd," Alexander protested. "Lily knows how much I—" He stopped, the word catching in his throat. How much you what? Sarah prompted softly. How much I love her, Alexander finished, the admission both obvious and profound. She has to know that. Children internalize doubt easily, Sarah explained, especially when it comes from an adult who seems authoritative. Mrs. Caldwell is on the school board. Her husband runs a hedge fund. In Lily's mind, this woman's opinion carries weight. Alexander stood abruptly. I need to speak with her, with Lily. Sarah nodded. Just be gentle. She's feeling vulnerable. Alexander approached Lily's bedroom door, knocking softly. Lily, it's me, Alex. May I come in? After a moment's hesitation, a small voice answered, Okay. Inside, he found Lily sitting cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by photographs and drawings, evidence of her methodical nature even in emotional distress. She had been organizing their family memories, it seemed, creating a timeline of sorts. Your mother told me what happened at school, Alexander began, sitting carefully at the edge of the bed. About what Mrs. Caldwell said. Lily didn't look up from the photograph in her hands, a recent image of the three of them at her birthday celebration. Is it true? Did Mom trick you into being my dad? The question struck Alexander like a physical blow. Absolutely not, Lily. Nothing could be further from the truth. But you didn't know about me until I came to your office, she persisted, her logical mind working through the puzzle. And now you have to buy us things and take care of us. Lily, look at me, Alexander requested gently. When she raised her eyes to his, he continued, I need you to understand something very important. Meeting you, discovering I had a daughter, was the most unexpected gift of my life. Not an obligation, not a burden, but a gift. The child's lower lip trembled slightly. But Mrs. Caldwell said, Mrs. Caldwell doesn't know our story, Alexander interrupted firmly. She doesn't know how brave you were to come find me, or how much your mother sacrificed to raise you on her own, or how empty my life was before you both came into it. Lily considered this, her analytical mind visibly processing his words. But you have to spend lots of money on us now, for the new house and my school and Mom's doctors. I want to spend those resources on you and your mother, Alexander explained, choosing his words carefully. Just like your mother spent everything she had, her time, her energy, her love, on you for all those years. That's what families do, Lily. They share what they have with the people they love. So, you're not mad that you have to be my dad? Lily asked in a small voice. I don't have to be your dad, Alexander clarified, moving closer to wrap an arm around her shoulders. I get to be your dad, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Lily leaned into his side, her rigid posture softening slightly. Do you promise? I promise. Alexander hesitated before adding, There's something I've never told you, Lily, something important. The child looked up at him expectantly. When I was growing up, my father was very different from me. He believed showing emotion was a weakness. He never told me he loved me, never held me when I was sad or scared. Alexander swallowed hard, sharing vulnerabilities he rarely acknowledged even to himself. I grew up believing that success meant being alone, that needing people was a failing. That sounds really lonely, Lily observed softly. It was, Alexander agreed. And I didn't even realize how lonely until you showed up in my office that day, looking for a job for your mother. He smiled at the memory. This brave, determined little girl who cared so much about her mom that she rode the bus alone across Boston. I was really scared, Lily confessed, but Mom needed help, and there was no one else. That moment changed everything for me, Alexander told her. Not because I suddenly discovered I had a daughter, but because I saw in you a courage and compassion I'd been missing my entire life. He gently turned her to face him directly. So you see, Lily, you're not an obligation. You're my teacher. You're showing me how to be the kind of person, the kind of father I never had. Tears welled in Lily's green eyes so like his own. Really? Really, Alexander confirmed, his own voice thick with emotion. And no matter what anyone says, that truth doesn't change. You, me, your mother. We're a family now. An unusual one perhaps, but real all the same. Lily threw her arms around his neck, burying her face against his shoulder. Alexander held her close, marveling at how natural this embrace felt now, compared to the awkward uncertainty of their early interactions. From the doorway, Sarah observed them silently, tears tracking down her cheeks. When Alexander met her gaze over Lily's head, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of the journey they had taken, separately and together, to reach this moment. Later that evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Alexander and Sarah sat in the living room, a comfortable silence between them. "Thank you," Sarah said finally, "for what you said to her. It was exactly what she needed to hear." Alexander nodded, his thoughts still processing the emotional intensity of the day. "I meant every word." "I know you did." Sarah studied him thoughtfully. "You've changed, Alexander, in ways I wouldn't have believed possible 2 months ago." "For the better, I hope," he replied with a faint smile. "Definitely for the better." Sarah hesitated before continuing. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you. About the day Lily came to your office." Alexander raised an eyebrow, inviting her to continue. "You could have called security, had her removed, contacted child services, any number of responses that wouldn't have involved personally investigating her situation." Sarah's gaze was penetrating. "Why didn't you?" The question gave Alexander pause. He had asked himself the same thing many times over the past weeks. "There was something about her," he answered slowly. "Something familiar that I couldn't place. Her eyes, obviously, though I didn't make that connection immediately. But more than that, her determination, her clarity of purpose." He shook his head, still somewhat mystified by his own actions that day. In that moment, sending her away wasn't even a consideration. It was as if some part of me recognized her, even before I knew who she was. Sarah nodded, as if his answer confirmed something she had suspected. The bond between parent and child can be powerful, even when we're not aware of it. "Is that why you never gave up searching for me?" Alexander asked. "Even after Hartwick told you I'd left the country?" "Partly," Sarah admitted, "but also because I believed Lily deserved to know her father, regardless of the circumstances." She smiled faintly. "Though I certainly never imagined this outcome." "What did you imagine?" Alexander inquired, genuinely curious about the scenarios she had envisioned. Sarah leaned back, considering the question. "Best case? That you'd acknowledge her, perhaps provide some financial support, maybe see her occasionally." She met his gaze directly. "I never expected you to want to be fully present in her life, to change your own life so dramatically to accommodate ours." "Neither did I," Alexander acknowledged. "But then, I never expected Lily, or to reconnect with you under these circumstances." A weighted silence fell between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. "The house in Brookline," Sarah said finally. "I think we should proceed with the move, for Lily's sake." Alexander nodded, a surge of quiet happiness warming his chest. "I'll make the arrangements." "There's one more thing," Sarah added, her tone shifting slightly. "This co-parenting arrangement we're creating, it needs a clear foundation, for Lily's stability and for our own boundaries." "I agree completely," Alexander assured her. "I've already consulted with attorneys about the legal framework." "I'm not talking about legal frameworks," Sarah interrupted gently. "I'm talking about us, Alexander, about our relationship." Alexander stilled, suddenly aware that they were approaching territory they had carefully avoided since their reunion. "What about our relationship?" he asked cautiously. "We're building a life together for Lily's sake," Sarah explained, "living under one roof, making joint decisions, presenting ourselves as a united front to the world. But we've never really addressed what we are to each other." Alexander considered her words carefully. "What would you like us to be?" "That's not a fair question," Sarah replied with a soft laugh. "I'm asking what you want, Alexander, beyond the practical arrangements for Lily's benefit." The directness of her inquiry demanded honesty. Alexander took a moment to organize his thoughts before responding. "When we met 8 years ago, I was a different person. Ambitious, certainly, but not yet hardened by the path I chose. I remember our brief time together as a road not taken." He met her gaze steadily. "Finding you again, through Lily, feels like a second chance I never expected to have." "A second chance at what, exactly?" Sarah pressed. "At balance," Alexander answered truthfully. at building something meaningful beyond business success, at family, in the fullest sense. He paused before adding, at us perhaps, if that's something you might consider. Sarah's expression remained carefully neutral. You mean a romantic relationship? I mean exploring the possibility, Alexander clarified. Not for Lily's sake, but for our own. Slowly, with appropriate boundaries, given our complicated circumstances. And if it doesn't work? Sarah challenged. If we try and discover we're incompatible? What happens to our carefully constructed co-parenting arrangement then? We adjust, Alexander replied simply. We adapt, as we've been doing since the beginning of this journey. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. Sarah, I'm not proposing we rush into anything. I'm suggesting we acknowledge that there might be more between us than just our shared connection to Lily. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but clear. I've spent 7 years being completely self-sufficient, making every decision, solving every problem, carrying every burden alone. The thought of opening myself to vulnerability again is terrifying. I understand, Alexander assured her, and I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Just an acknowledgement that the question exists. Sarah nodded slowly. The question exists, she agreed, and deserves careful consideration. Later, as Alexander prepared to leave, Sarah walked him to the door. In a gesture that surprised them both, she reached up to touch his cheek gently. The house in Brookline, she said quietly. The observatory you're building in the attic. Yes, Lily told me about your secret project. The family we're creating together. It's more than I ever dared to hope for. Alexander covered her hand with his own. For me as well. As he drove home through the quiet, snow-dusted streets of Boston, Alexander reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 2 months. From the moment a determined 7-year-old had appeared in his office doorway, his carefully constructed world had been fundamentally altered. Not destroyed, as he might once have feared, but enriched beyond measure. The man who had built Westfield Enterprises through sheer ambition and strategic brilliance now found himself focused on a different kind of legacy altogether. One measured not in acquisitions and profit margins, but in a child's trust, a co-parent's respect, and the possibility of a love he had once abandoned without understanding its value. In his mind's eye, Alexander could see the Brookline house awaiting them, solid, welcoming, with room for 3 separate lives to merge into something stronger than any could be alone. Like the constellations Lily loved to study, they were forming a new pattern together. Distinct points of light connected by invisible but unbreakable bonds. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more adjustments, more lessons in the complex art of family. But tonight, driving through the gentle snowfall toward a future he never could have imagined, Alexander Westfield felt something he had spent a lifetime pursuing without recognizing. He felt complete.